Oh, Tony, do you want to go first, and then
Sure, I can introduce myself and then you can go ahead then and start our presentation. Yeah, I'm Tony and calling in from Lekwungen lands. And yeah, sunny day here and feeling really happy to be in this call with some really incredible minds with pretty fascinating insights, and just hearing about the kinds of work that you do is really incredible, like storytelling fellow with the transition work. I just imagine that's a really exciting role. And yeah, looking forward to sharing about some of the work that we're doing and then just exploring some of the overlaps with work that you folks are involved with. Over to you, Ben.
Awesome. Thanks, Tony. Yeah. Yeah, good to see you, Michelle. And again, as to reiterate what Tony and others have said, really feels like such a privilege to be here in this space. So thank you so much for giving us the space to talk about this program that we're so passionate about. And yeah, I'm calling in from the traditional and unceded territories of the Sinixt, the Syilx, and the Ktunaxa in what is now known as Nelson, BC. And it's a beautiful sunny winter day out here right now. And I just came back from a walk and excited to get into this. So I'll share my screen. There we go. Okay, how do we do this here? Sorry, I think I would have figured this out now.
No worries.
Slideshow, there we go. All right. Okay, oops.
Yeah, that looks great.
That's looking good. Excellent. Yes. Thank you. So yeah, as was mentioned, Tony and I work with Youth Climate Corps. The program focuses on providing paid work and training to young people in community-led climate action projects. And yeah, we're really excited to share what this program is about. I think the diversity of perspectives and viewpoints in this room will be able to, I'm really curious to see, you know, what draws people to this program, what excites people, because it is really kind of multifaceted. So it started with that basic vision of we're living in a climate crisis. There's the pandemic. At the time, there's record high youth unemployment, youth mental health, and the founders thought that a good way to address all these things was to pay young people a living wage to work on these projects that really need to be scaled up at quite an urgent rate. So that was the base premise, and they were able to partner with WildSight, who's a regional nonprofit in the Kootenays over here in Southeast BC, and develop this program. So the first year, it was 4 months. They hired 12 young people between the ages of 17 and 30, and they worked on a variety of different climate action projects. They did some wildfire mitigation, food security, some leadership training, and it was a pretty big success. They won the Sustainability Leadership Award at the City of Nelson and got tremendous feedback from the participants, and that compelled Youth Climate Corps to continue on for another year. And since then, we've run 3 different seasons and have expanded to Kimberley, Cranbrook as well too, and we'll be expanding fairly large in 2023, which we'll be talking about a little bit in more detail later. So in terms of the specific projects that Youth Climate Corps likes to do, well, we are cohort based, so we like to we see the huge benefit in having that cohort, having those learning opportunities. So it's not just a work opportunity, it's not just a workplace training or job training, or it's a combination of all these different things, and really with a focus on educational opportunities, building a sense of community, building a sense of place. And there's many different iterations of that. So the program is really designed to look different in every community and respond to different community needs. So here's some of the examples of the projects we've done. We have that picture on the right there is some of the crew members doing some wildfire mitigation work outside of Nelson, BC, which is tremendously important. Nelson is one of the highest risk communities in I think in British Columbia or Canada to wildfire risk, because we're surrounded by forest and mountains, and there's a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done there. So the crew do that work. They treat a section for us, and they're also through that process, they're trained in that and are able to continue their career in supporting work, a lot of work that needs to be done. Here's another example of some of the work they've been doing is so ecosystem restoration work they were doing outside of Kimberley-Cranbrook, building a wetland, which has so many different co-benefits. Wetland is water security, biodiversity, all that sort of stuff. This is a S100 course that they were doing in preparation for some wildfire mitigation. And this is a building retrofit that they did last year in Nelson. And so to give you an idea of the co-benefits and the overlapping factors that we see in these programs, this project that they worked on was is a long-term care home for a nonprofit-led long-term care home for adults with developmental disabilities. And some of the impacts that we saw from this retrofit is the residents already commented that the house was more comfortable. So, you know, like in a lot of places in Western North America and many parts of the world, we also experience increasing extreme heat. And so for them to comment that the added insulation was already having an immediate effect on their comfort was really great. So there's that side of things. There's the equity focus that we like to take to all of our projects, serving the people that are going to be disproportionately affected by climate change. But then there's also the workplace aspect as well too. So you'll see some of these photos. We have this program, I think, had about 7 women working on the work site, which are disproportionately underrepresented. I think the trade workforce has less than 10% women. So really good to have that as like an introduction into the trades, that the trades can be climate action. This is important work that needs to be done. And then, of course, there's the reduced cost for the nonprofit and the reduced greenhouse gas emissions with the reduce in energy use. So it's a pretty exciting program, and we're excited to explore other opportunities for retrofits as well too. This is some food security work that they've done. This was in Kimberley, supporting a community farm, community garden, which was really cool. And for some reason it looks like it's like kind of granular on my screen. I don't know what's going on there, but anyway, this is a quote. It's kind of long, but I'll just read it out because I think it does really paint a good picture on the outcomes that we do see from the crews. So this is from Alex. This year I've stepped into a longer term role as their climate action assistant at the regional district of Central Kootenay. We're developing a climate action plan for the upcoming electoral cycle. Through this work, I've run into many of the same industry experts who've run me through the Youth Climate Corps program, watched my Youth Climate Corps colleagues continue on their own professional careers, and still often call upon my Youth Climate Corps supervisors for advice. I can't stress how much the support the program and staff have been for me over the recent years of my life and career. YCC is now an integral player in climate action in the local community and will hopefully have the capacity to collaborate with the regional district on the implementation of our upcoming climate action plan. I would love nothing more than to see this opportunity extended to youth and other communities around BC and beyond. So this is just like a small microcosm of what some of the outcomes are on a personal level, and it's this kind of agency building, this leadership building that is really inspiring and also has a tremendous amount of potential at a larger scale, especially when we think about young people growing up facing the climate crisis and often not knowing how to address it. Youth Climate Corps provides a low barrier, paid access to developing their career in the climate action space, which is really exciting. So I'll pass it. Actually, this is the last slide I'll do, and then I'll pass it over to Tony. So kind of just reiterating here some of the benefits that we've seen for youth. So, and then we have seen that Youth Climate Corps is in a unique space. There are a lot of really amazing opportunities for young people that are volunteer based, but there's a limited amount of these community level career programs that focus on climate action that are paid, which is, as you can imagine, a huge barrier for a lot of folks who can't afford to spend a significant amount of time volunteering. So we do see we haven't come across other programs that fill this kind of unique space. Okay, so I'll pass it over to Tony, and I can keep doing the slides here for you, Tony.
Thanks, Ben. So yeah, the way that a lot of our programs unfold is through partnerships on the ground with local businesses, governments, organizations, and volunteer groups. So that means that we're not coming into a community and expecting to like completely reinvent the wheel and impose a set of priorities on a community that probably knows what's, what are the needs in the community. So it's a pretty iterative, slow, careful process to develop the curriculum and programming. So those partnerships are really key to our work. Could you move to the next slide, please, Ben? And then also central to our work is just recognizing that any meaningful climate action isn't going to be successful unless it's lifting up the work and leadership of folks that have been most affected by climate change. So Black, Indigenous, people of color, queer folk, young people, folks that don't have access to post-secondary education. And then we recognize that climate action tends to look a certain way portrayed by mainstream media, like either you are a recycling princess, which A, doesn't really feel that meaningful, or B, implies that you live in an urban center and have access to public transit and recycling compost systems, or you have 3 degrees and you're able to work in a fancy office doing climate work. So that excludes a huge amount of people from feeling like they can have meaningful, play a meaningful role in climate action. So yeah, that's a lot of what our work is. And then, being on unceded land also involves really trying to get out of the way of Indigenous leadership. So I'm looking forward to sharing about one of our programs that's completely Indigenous led. But just briefly, I'll speak to how the benefits aren't just for youth, but also to community. So helping to advance local climate action targets, and contributing to national and international commitments. I won't read through all of these because you can also read them on the screen, but yeah, briefly, it just supports, like building public support for climate justice, so furthering public education, and yeah, lowering barriers to that meaningful work in climate action. And yeah, next slide, please, Ben. And then the program I just mentioned is on so-called North Vancouver Island in partnership with the Kwakwaka'wakw Revitalization Project, which is a coalition of youth from various Kwakwaka'wakw First Nations that are working to advance land rights, Indigenous sovereignty, and food security. So I've personally been sort of a friend of this work for many years, but then through my role with YCC, we've been able to help with a lot of admin and fundraising work. So through our like NGO structure, we're able to apply for like quite large grants. We just submitted a $1 million grant to help build a big house and support some of the ecotourism visioning that has been in place for a long time. So it's been really nice to figure out what a partnership looks like between a settler-led NGO and a grassroots Indigenous-led project. So yeah, essentially we're not trying to impose the typical YCC structure of working with the youth camps that they have. They have youth camps that they've been running in the summertime. And through our work in our partnership with the Kwakwaka'wakw Revitalization Project, because we're like quite a nimble, small NGO, we've been able to really be adaptive and take a lot of time to carefully build this relationship between the NGO and this project. And it's been really inspiring. Yeah, like I said, the program is completely led by youth on the ground and matriarchal leadership, as well as hereditary chiefs. And then this summer, we're looking forward to some youth camps that are working towards food sovereignty and the revitalization of Indigenous food systems. And next slide, please, Ben. Just a few pictures, if you could sort of move through these kind of quick. I don't think I want to take too much time, but just to locate, it was on the north end of so-called Vancouver Island. Here's a view of the estuary. Oh, thanks, Ben. Sorry. Here's a view of the estuary. It's a really beautiful site where a village is being rebuilt. Excuse me. 70 years ago, one of the Kwakwaka'wakw First Nations, Montaguila First Nation, they were kicked out of one of their villages through colonization, and now they're like, screw it, we're moving back, we're rebuilding. And it's been a project I've been involved with for several years, but now with this grants that we're able to apply for, it's really exciting to see this project taking off with more access to funding. So here's some examples of, next slide, please, Ben. Some examples of some of the youth work that's being led. Some marine harvesting workshops being led by community members. So here's some sockeye salmon that's being processed and jarred. There's been some large-scale solar panel setups. Here's the first of a few projects of setting up solar panels. Because the village is really rural, there's been no running water. There's still no running water. But now with solar, there's power, but it's still an ongoing process to rebuild this village. Here's a picture of me with Tsa. She's in her 70s and has been living in this village full time, tough as nails. Next slide, please, Ben. And just a bit more about the youth camps that are happening this summer. So yeah, the main intentions is to just keep getting Indigenous youth out on the homelands. We're going to be able to offer them daily stipends, sort of paid wages to be on the land practicing culture. And then until we totally smash capitalism, some wages and funding is helpful. And yeah, being paid to like carry out traditional stewardship roles and engage in cultural revitalization work, doing salmon habitat restoration and food security work and infrastructure enhancement in the village. So this is, the exciting visions for this summer. And then that's just one of the programs that are new this year. We're also running a program in Vancouver, as well as in Kamloops, and then potentially some programs in Rossland and the West Kootenays. And what would this look like is doubling the alumni by 2023. We're expanding really quickly right now, and we're continuing to develop models to scale our work. And we'd love to see programs all over BC that are distinct and meaningful and part of a just transition. And what we'd love to discuss with you is hear any questions and feedback you might have about our work, our presentation, and do a bit of brainstorming with you, clever folks, about what you've seen in terms of financing this kind of work. Funding is always a struggle for us as a small NGO. It's a classic problem of just spending quite a huge amount of time grant writing. And so, curious if anyone has any thoughts about that. And then opportunities to deepen our partnerships with local government and get support from provincial and federal government. Part of what we've brainstormed is, if we can find a way to lobby government to turn this into a provincial or a federal program so that it's not so precarious as far as not being sure if we're going to be able to run programs because of the volatility of being grant dependent. And then we'll leave these questions up, I guess, Ben, just so that we can return to them, but I don't want to blast through all of these. There was just a couple more. Looking for investment opportunities to keep growing and scaling up, and just curious if anyone has any thoughts about how Youth Climate Corps can do an even better job of contributing to just transition and a green economy. So with that, thanks so much for hearing our little story.
Wonderful, thank you. Thanks, Ben and Tony. Maybe, is there a way to cut and paste the questions and put them in the chat so we can see everybody? That would be brilliant. Thank you. And I know we had somebody who had to leave at the half hour, but Leslie's, commenting as well. So let's open it up. Stephen, you're going to kick us off. Here we go. Over to you.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Ben and Tony. It's such inspiring work. And I guess my question comes from, I attended a talk here in Victoria with Seth Klein a couple of days ago, and in his, in the Climate Emergency Unit platform, one of their campaigns is a call for a national youth climate corps. And they have a network across the country, and I'm just wondering if you're working with Seth and that group as part of that call. And it leads me to sort of this part two, which would be, who are your allies in the national space or the federal space who would champion this with you? And I'm thinking about another, excuse me, participant here at TIG, the Climate Caucus. We've got 300 municipal and provincial elected officials and senior bureaucrats working on climate issues. It might be interesting to talk to, but I'm sure you're further down this road. I'm just wondering if if we can make any helpful suggestions or connections for you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so with Seth and the Climate Emergency Unit, yeah, we're working closely with them. One of our, well, it's a really lived experience is, each program costs about $150,000 to $300,000 to run, which, as you can imagine, for a small nonprofit, if you're running a couple of those, is a tremendous amount of time and capacity to make that happen. So we know that this needs to be a government program. So we're kind of running with the way we like to kind of think about the relationship between CEU and Youth Climate Corps is, we're kind of like doing the stuff on the ground. Somebody said, wow, it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work. It's so stressful. And so we're doing the work on the ground. We're really like contributing to the story of like seeing what it looks like on the ground. And one of the things that's exciting about this year is the program has been run in the Columbia Basin for the past 3 years. And this is going to be the first year we're going to be in Vancouver. We're going to be in, North Vancouver Island and Kamloops. And so our hope is that will be like that visibility of being outside the Columbia Basin will be really helpful. But yeah, we're really supportive of the work that Seth and the folks there do. I know they're doing a lot of work in Alberta right now. And our hope is that we can help contribute to that campaign through the work that we're doing and showing what it looks like on the ground and really like expanding the proof of concept. So yeah, and then for your second question, in terms of federal context, yeah, we've been having we have a fair bit of provincial contacts that have been excited to champion this project, but we haven't been able to gain too much traction on the federal side. We are having a meeting tomorrow. It's actually the first meeting with anybody in the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Canada. So we will see how that goes, but yeah, it is definitely as Tony mentioned in the slide, that current financial model that we have is fairly unsustainable. It's a program that has been we've thought that programs might not be able to run because if a single grant is unsuccessful, if it's a major core grant, if it's unsuccessful, then that could just mean that the program isn't going to run in that community, which so we've been experimenting with different ways of doing that.
Great. Anything, Stephen? Oh, we got a thumbs up. Okay, awesome. Alex.
Yeah, first of all, a great presentation and this type of work connecting youth with not only opportunities, but raising awareness of how it matters is really, really valuable. I have a question. When we work with, for instance, communities like Pearl Bernie that are looking to make maker spaces that connect youth to work like what you're doing, have you engaged with, for instance, industry? To give an example, Pearl Bernie has Coulson Aviation that retrofits aircraft for firefighting. Have you found any opportunity to work with industry and coupling it, for instance, with the funding from MyTax and finding an academic partner?
No, we haven't gone through MyTax. I think, well, one of the things with MyTax is because of our we're looking at scale, my taxes normally is like a one kind of student at a time. And then in terms of partnering with industry, we've been in some conversations with some different union schools in the Vancouver area, especially in some of Vancouver Island. And they're really excited because of kind of what we mentioned in the presentations, that we're able to provide this kind of entry for people into this workforce, and providing that entryway by framing it as climate action, because that's what it is. And so I know like some of those folks that work in those union schools, or are part of those unions, are excited to provide pathways for the Youth Climate Corps crew after they finish the program, and then might continue on to do an apprenticeship or something like that. But that is something that we are looking to explore. Like, one of the things that we've been kind of finding challenging is navigating the retrofit space. There's so much to do there, and we want to be in a place that is contributing to projects in a really meaningful way and not necessarily hindering them. And so there's so much to do there, and in terms of retrofit. So that is something that we're continuing exploring, is trying to partner with industry to make that happen. But I know there's a fair bit of red tape in terms of like unions, and making sure that they're the right skill level for that type of project. I hope that answers your question.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Just you might be following the chat, but there's some great stuff in there, and I see that you're responding to some of it, but there is just maybe after Njoki we can come to Thomas's question around the retrofit program you're exploring with Rob and Rick, how it turned out. So Njoki, let's go to you first, and then we'll come back to that question.
Yeah, thank you, Ben and Tony, for that amazing presentation. And I've learned so much about this program just from you, but also reading the brochure or the info chart that you sent. I volunteer as a board member with a local charity here called Environmental Youth Alliance. And we have a program also that works with youth who are underrepresented, mostly between 14 to 18, and a lot of job training in land stewardship and environmental related work. But one of the challenges from our observations and experiences is how funding, even when you're applying for a job, funding sometimes is restricted to people that hold certain immigration status, and often Canadian and PR. I wonder how you have come across, if you have come across that in your funding programs, and even when you're thinking of going federal, how are you thinking about those of us who are not yet able to access that immigration status, but are still so passionate about the work of land stewardship and environmental care?
That's a really good comment. We haven't come across that yet, but I was having a conversation with a friend a couple of weeks ago, and she kind of emphasized that we need to be providing this work to folks who are climate refugees. These, as we kind of mentioned in the presentation, like people who are the most vulnerable to these climate impacts. So yeah, no, I can't really comment more on that, but that is like, yeah, that's a good point. I'm not sure if you want to add anything to that, Tony.
No, I mean, yeah, like Ben said, we haven't encountered that yet, but I think it would just involve doing a bit of homework about, how to handle like the legal side of like contracts and tax forms. I mean, people have been doing this for a long time, of being able to provide work for folks that don't have like the paperwork under like the Canadian colonial government anyway. So yeah, if we did homework around it, I'm sure we would find a way to be able to provide those jobs. Thanks for bringing that up.
Okay, Leslie.
Well, my first observation is wow, in terms of not only what you're bringing, but the passion by which you are bringing it and the way you frame what you're doing. I just have three quick observations. One is that one of our partners is 1,000 landscapes for 1 billion people. And I don't know if you're aware of that initiative, but one of the things they've learned is that in order to really do scaling, they need to look at how they give capacity building to others. And I'm just wondering, inside of that is a question, how many folks are inside the core that are working in the organization at this point?
So we have, like right now, there aren't any projects that are running. So we just have the kind of admin staff, and so that's Wild Site run all the Youth Climate Corps programs in the Columbia Basin, and then
Right.
Youth Climate Corps, who Tony and I work for, run them all outside. So not that many, like 7 or 8 right now. Actually, a bit more because there's some folks working in the North Island, but yeah, as Tony said, like we're hoping to double the alumni this year. So we have, I think it's about 43 people have gone through the program, and then if all those programs run, then we should have at least 50 people in the program just for 2023. So kind of, I guess, exponential growth, which hopefully will continue on.
One thing I could say, oh, sorry, were you gonna add?
No, you go ahead.
One thing I could say is that I guess in my project management with the North Island project, the goal is to work ourselves out of a job, in a sense. And like, to me, that's like a really great goal, because essentially you're just offering resources, capacity building, so that folks can run the show on their own without us. And I think that that's true for all of our programs, in the sense that we're just equipping youth with the skills that they need to really fly in terms of the careers that they choose to engage in. Yeah, I mean, tangible examples is with this North Island project is they're looking to set up their own society, this youth group, so that they can apply for grants and hold grant funding on their own, and then helping facilitate capacity building training for Indigenous youth leadership work, and then also supporting them creating an ecotourism, cultural tourism operation, so that ideally as soon as possible we're out of there and just showing up to, you know, partake in their operation as tourists.
Well, I mean, 1,000 Landscapes has the same goal, is to not be needed. The scaling, though, is about how to get in other geographies. And so it's not so much that, it's capacity building that allows for other pathways to go into different provinces, different countries. That's what I mean by the capacity building of what you're doing that can then get transferred to others. So it's one of those things that we find is if you're catching the competencies that you're using and bundling them in a way that allows for that intelligence to get transmitted to others, it makes the scaling a different kind of opportunity. That's what I was talking about in terms of that. And because you're small, I mean, you're running hither to yon. Sometimes in having an advisory group, volunteer advisory group that is holding the space for catching all the stuff you're doing as a capacity building entity, then it happens as you go. It's not something you have to separate yourselves from. Which leads me to my last point, which is in urban centers, the pathway for mental health for youth is increasingly, it's getting more funding, and it's also getting a significant more attention. And when I'm listening into what you're doing, there's an enormous amount of cadre in the mental wellness of the youth that are coming in and working and finding purpose and all of that. And so I'm wondering, while it's the entry is climate and living wage, whether there's also in urban centers a pathway through the mental health aspects of what you do. Just a thought.
Yeah, great point. Totally.
Yeah, I
Great.
think, so I just want to comment
Please.
one last thing. Sorry, it was Leslie, your screens.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's one thing that I think is like really beautiful about Youth Climate Corps is that it's not just like this fixed box of a program, and it's something that can like adapt and change based on the community needs. And one of the things that we mentioned on the discussion is fitting into the needs of a community, fitting into the needs of a just transition. And youth mental health is it's a thing that I think, you know, like we can all probably relate to in some way. And yeah, I definitely don't envy teenagers of today who are growing up in a highly digitalized pandemic with you know, the climate crisis on you know, really showing itself of what the future can look like, the biodiversity crisis. Anyway, I don't need to go down that more, but that was one of the things that prompted the founders to really want to make Youth Climate Corps. So yeah, so there is that within each program, there is, you know, that ability for supports, and this is something that we're trying to explore more. But as I said, we're a fairly small team and really trying to build that capacity up within our team so that we can provide the folks that are facilitating this program the skills to you know, have mental health supports, and to, like, for example, if a young person is moving to, let's say, Kamloops to do a Youth Climate Corps program, they're having the support so they are safe as a young person moving somewhere new for a job, right? So that is something that we're definitely thinking of, and we're trying to grasp all these different parts and continue as we build our capacity, capture those different pieces there. So yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that. And while I'm on this thought, before I forget, I just want to open an invitation that that as an organization, we are continuing to grow, and there are opportunities for folks who do want to get involved in other more meaningful ways, such as advisors or board members or different volunteer capacity. So I just wanted to mention that, but thank you so much for pointing that out.
Great, thank you. Laura.
Yeah, well, first off, congrats. It's amazing work that you're doing. I first heard of the Youth Climate Corps idea in Seth Klein's book, and then when I heard about your organization, I was like, oh, this exists. Like, I didn't know that there was kind of a pilot in a sense of what this could look like. And I love the idea of, you know, scaling this up, and I think it should be a national program funded by the federal government, ideally, or I guess most likely ESDC or CCCC or ICED, probably one of those. But I feel like, and this is partially, I used to work with the feds for some years, like I find they're not going to be, they're like the last mover, right? They're not going to typically see a great program that's working at a local level and see opportunities to scale something nationally. And I wonder if there might be like, yeah, and a lot of people have shared great ideas in the chat, and speaking around potential funders, potentially like a bridge kind of funder, someone who is willing to see like potential to scale it, maybe more like province-wide or like a larger region, and then think about the next phase as going national and potentially having federal support. And one organization that came to mind is the Red Cross, because they are funding us right now to do a project here at Tamarack around eco-anxiety and youth climate leadership that I do want to chat with you. I hope we can connect another time around that. But it's also making the link that Leslie made around mental health and eco-anxiety. And this project is going to be, it's over the next 12 months. So we're launching it very soon, and it's going to wrap up early next year. And we're going to be supporting youth in BC and Yukon to go through a cohort program. So 3 months of a workshop series around managing eco-anxiety and overcoming it, and how to take local climate action in your community, and how to connect with others and all of that. And so after they do that program, they're going to get the opportunity to get funding to actually initiate local projects as a collective. And we have a similar like cohort-based approach as you were speaking about. And yeah, so that's going to be an interesting experiment. And the Red Cross had approached us. They're very interested in, especially within BC and Yukon, this issue of eco-anxiety and youth and climate work. So that's one potential idea. But yeah, I'd be happy to chat more. And a couple other organizations at the national level that came to mind, and you're probably connected with them, but like Youth Climate Lab and Foundation for Environmental Stewardship are two we've been working with a bit, and they're doing amazing things.
Great. So many good ideas. We just have a few minutes left together. Is there anything anybody else wants to share, or Ben or Tony, that you would like to pose to the group? We're in good shape. And there's another idea in the chat there. So we'll share out this recording and the notes. Thank you, Taryn. I guess just more, I know I suggested this as a possibility. If you find a little space where you would like to write an article for the National Observer, that is an option as well, as part of the Bolder, Faster Together series. And just, thank you to everybody for creating the space. We did have 2 sessions this week, so lots of transition innovation group time together, and some were at both, some could come to one or the other, but this is always a wonderful time spent together. And so thank you for the incredible work that you're doing. And I know I've shared this with you, but this group is open. So if you come across anybody who would like to be part of this, everybody is welcome. And you can kind of see how the topics are, and see how that kind of lands for you as we meet bi-weekly. So thank you. Deep appreciation for your all the work you're doing and for your sharing today, and to each of you for all your brilliant ideas. And I'll make sure we save the meeting chat as well.
Really appreciate your time and your feedback. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thanks so much, folks. Please, I put my email in the chat, so please reach out. It'd be great to connect with everybody here, really.
Wonderful. Thank you. So until next time. Here we are, Thomas.